Welcome. This video introduces the idea of higher order functions. So I've got a bunch of blocks already built. Don't worry about building any of them. The purpose of this video is just to walk through the basic idea of what higher order functions are and how we're going to make use of them. So we're going to start by looking at this little script. We've got an index variable and a repeat that's going to repeat the length of this list called numbers. And we're going to say the current item of numbers and then change the index. Well, we've seen a recipe like this before. Basically makes the character count through each thing in numbers. And I could modify items as I go. So if I don't just want to say the value, say I want to add 3. These represent test scores, and I've decided to curve the test a little bit. And so we're going to add 3 points to everyone's score. So we could say their score plus 3. And now he'll say 89, 95, 87, etc. And if we wanted to, we could build up a new list from these scores, so that maybe we could go do some more processing, process the letter grades based on the new list or something like that. So instead of just saying the numbers, we could do something like, well, we're going to have this other list, and so we're going to start by deleting everything from it. And then as we go through, instead of saying, so let's rip the say out of there, we're going to add the current item plus 3 to that new list. All right, so if I run this one, we just make a copy and increase each score by 3. Now there are lots of things I could do to a list that look like this basic recipe. So let's say I want to use this 2-letter grade. Right, so I want to turn everyone's scores into things like, if I take the 87, the score 87, that's the letter grade B. Right, so I want to replace all the numbers with, in the new list with letter grades. Well, it's going to be the same basic recipe, right? I can use the same basic loop, and kind of all that really changes is the logic of what I'm doing to the current thing. So now we're not doing the plus 3. I guess I could still have that wrapped in there, but let's run this script. All right, we get the letter grade that corresponds to each score. But the basic process that we're going to go through doesn't change. All that changed is the logic of what we do with each individual item. So this is where the idea of higher order functions come in. It'd be nice to write this as one recipe. Hey, here's how we go do something to everything in a list. And give ourselves the flexibility to specify later on exactly what we're going to do. So that's basically what is going on down in this block. Make new list from, and I can specify what list I'm going to start with blank. So right now, let's go take a look at it. It's got the same basic logic that we had up here, just using script variables. And we're doing the plus 3 to each item in the list and adding it to a new list we're building up. So we're going to be creating a new list kind of from scratch. So we're not actually going to be seeing the results here. We're just going to be reporting it back from this block. So we're going to see the results right here. So right now if I run this, right, we get the same result before. We can see the values there. The top one's cut off, but we can see that we've got 3 more than the values we started with. And I could go edit this block and find the right spot and rip this out and put in the 2-letter grade, say. But that's kind of fiddly. What I'd like to be able to do is say, hey, use this block. I'm going to actually give you the block to use. I'm going to tell you to use plus 3. Or I'm going to tell you to use 2-letter grade. This is the idea of a higher order function, the ability to use a function as a piece of information. So to make this work, we've got to go edit our make list from numbers. And instead of saying this particular instruction is what we're going to do, we're going to replace that with this call block with inputs. So the call function, let's go look at it real quickly. So the call instruction says to just run some other instruction. So I could say call 4 plus 3. And it tells me 7. I could say call blank plus 3 and give it the input 4, and it's going to take that number and plug it into the missing spot and tell me 7 again. Now, not terribly impressive out here, but it's the tool that we need in here to say call whatever block we're passing in with the input, the current item from the list. So now I can say something like, you know what, I want to make a new list from numbers using plus 3, blank plus 3, and what we're going to do is we're going to call this function, plus 3, on each item in the list, and use that to build our new list. And so there's our new list. You can see the last value is 84, which is 3 more than the 81 was. All right. And I can use the same exact block without going and fiddling with anything and say, okay, this time make a new list from numbers, but we're going to do 2-letter grade with whatever the current value is. And so you can see the last 3 scores, BCB, BCB, makes perfect sense. We could even do something like, so I can see that if I add 5 to every score, this should still be a B. That'll become 80, which is a B, and that'll still be a B. So I could even do some composition where I say, I want you to take the current score, add 5 to it, and turn that into a letter grade. So I'm going to drop that, and oh, I missed my spot. Now, so you'll notice I'm being very careful here with where I get this block. I want it to have a gray ring around it. The gray ring around it is how I say, don't do this function immediately. Pass this function in as the actual piece of information. Right? If I have it looking like the script looking like this with no gray border, it's going to try and actually execute this 2-letter grade with blank, and it'll probably get confused. When I have get in the very center of the gray circle, I end up with this gray border, and this is what says, you know, don't execute this right away. Pass this in as the block we're going to use. This is a higher order function, a function that's being used like a piece of data. So with this version, I can call the script, and you can see we get BBB for the last 3 scores because we're first taking the score, we're putting it in the blank, we're adding 5 to it, and then we're turning that into a letter grade. This is the basic idea of higher order functions. In the rest of the videos, we're going to explore some built-in blocks that exist, if you know how to load them, to do things like this to an existing list that allow us to step back from the low-level thinking about, okay, I need an index variable, I'm going to repeat the number of things in the list, and to express our algorithms at a higher level. Hey, just make me a new list that's a copy of this one that looks like this. Right? This is kind of a lot cleaner, simpler way of thinking about the problem than having to be dragged down to the level of writing my repeat every time I want to just do something to every item in a list.